ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिके। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. By His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 29, talks between Narada Muni and King Prachinabhari. So, we are in the section, this is text 60 to 79, and here Narada Muni is more specifically explaining mind's role in the soul's transmigration. So, it's a long 20, this section. Role of the mind in the transmigration of the living entity. So, yesterday we have seen that how the subtle body remains after death, and there is a logic of the dream to understand reincarnation. That even while we are awake, we are carried away from our existing body to a different reality, to a different realm. Although remotely we may control the body, and then when we come back and experience the dream and come back, all the experiences are, can be visibly seen. And this is the reason for one's next life also. So, to the degree one identifies with his gross body, the jiva performs action. He receives the result of the actions in his subtle body, and then repeatedly, this cycle. And by that action performed with a certain identity, he takes a birth in another gross body. And this is how the samsara chakram continues. And therefore, when one sees the actions of the 10 senses, one's action through the 10 senses, they reveals one chitta or consciousness or mental condition. And that also reveals one's position in the previous life, because chitta vritti is carried from lifetime after lifetime, subtle body is carried. So, and Prabhupada gives the example that how unseen objects are often seen in the dream. Prabhupada gives the example of how somebody may be flying in the dream, and that is a very, very high indication that one may be remembering one's demigod life or one's some astronaut life in the previous life. So now we come to text 65. तेन स्यातादृशं राजन् लिङ्गनो देहसम्भवः श्रद्धस्क्वादनुभूतोऽर्थो न मनः स्प्रष्टुमर्हति. Translation.
Therefore, my dear king, the living entity who has a subtle mental covering develops all kinds of thoughts and images because of his previous body. Take this from me as certain. There is no possibility of concocting anything mentally without having perceived it in the previous body. Purport. Krishna Bahirmukahana Bhoga Vancha Kare Nikatastamaya Tare Tare Japatiya Dhare Prema Vivarta. Actually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the supreme enjoyer. When a living entity wants to imitate him, he is given a chance to satisfy his false desire to lord it over material nature. That is the beginning of his downfall. As long as he is within this material atmosphere, he has a subtle vehicle in the form of mind, which is the stockpile of all kinds of material desires. Such desires become manifest in different bodily forms. Srila Narada Muni requests the king to accept this fact from him because Narada is an authority. The conclusion is that the mind is the storehouse of our past desires, and we have this present body due to our past desires. Similarly, whatever we desire in this present body will be expressed in a future body. Thus, the mind is the source of different kinds of bodies. If the mind is purified by Krishna consciousness, one will naturally in the future get a body that is spiritual and full of Krishna consciousness. Such a body is our original form. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirms, Jivere Swarupa hai Krishna Nityadas. Every living entity is constitutionally an eternal servant of Krishna. If a person is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, he is to be considered a liberated soul even in this life. This is confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami. Iha yasya hareرداسye karmana manasa gira nikhalashva api avasthasu jivan muktasa uchyate. One who engages in the transcendental service of the Lord in body, mind, and words is to be considered liberated in all conditions of material existence. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.187. The Krishna consciousness movement is based on this principle. We must teach people to absorb themselves always in the service of Lord because that position is their natural position. One who is always serving the Lord is to be considered already liberated. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14.26. Mam cha yo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sa gunan samitayitayan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who always engages in the spiritual activities of unalloyed devotional service at once transcends the modes of material nature and is elevated to the spiritual platform. The devotee is therefore above the three modes of material nature and is even transcendental to the Brahmana platform. A Brahmana may be infected by the two baser modes, namely Rajoguna and Tamoguna. A pure devotee who is free from all material desires experienced on the mental platform and who is also free from empiric philosophical speculation or fruitive activity is always above material conditioning and is always liberated. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So Narada Muni, now he describes how the mental impressions from the previous body, it is not possible to appear in the mind without a previous experience. And Narada Muni says, please take this as a certainty from me, O King Prachina Barihi. Now, this is amazing, important shloka, Why? Because you cannot think of anything which we have not expressed, which we have not experienced in our previous lives. And therefore, this is a very strong proof that whenever you think of God, that means God exists. Simple it is. You cannot think of anything which we have not experienced in the previous lives. So therefore, of course, one may mix up the things, like one may see the Prabhupada explains in another book. One may see the flying mountain, but somebody will say, does the flying golden mountain exist? But the flying object exists, golden object exists, and the mountain also exists. So we cannot imagine anything which doesn't exist. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes that the living entity, Krishna Bahirmukha, but when he becomes Antarmukha, when he Krishna Bahirmukha, Prabhupada writes here that the living entity is suffering or enjoying the past desires that he has. And the current desires the living entity has will be shaping the subtle body of the living entity, and eventually that will become a reality. So whatever we are thinking about now will become reality. And because a devotee is always thinking of Krishna, Savai Manah Krishna Padaravindayor, and therefore devotee is guaranteed to receive spiritual body in the next life, and which is full of Krishna consciousness, and that is the original position. And in that spiritual body, one is always engaged in the service of the Lord. In fact, one did not wait to receive the spiritual body. As soon as we are engaged in the spiritual activity, the body is spiritualized, and such a personality is called as Jivan Muktaha Sauchyate. And Srila Prabhupada says this is the basis principle of Krishna consciousness, this movement. What is the principle? We must teach people to absorb ourselves always in the service of the Lord, because that position is our original position, right? And therefore, we have to have, His Grace Radhesham Prabhu always stresses on this. He says, he will say that you are a counselor in a counselor's meeting. You just see everybody is engaged very properly. Everybody should have at least one engagement of 2 hours per week in the temple. If you are staying away from the temple or something like that, but one must have some solid, identifiable engagement, right? Solid, identifiable engagement. Of course, it need not mean that we are famous for that activity, but it has to be a solid, identifiable engagement. Just like, we have Gundisha Marjanam, then it is Mudit, our Preeti Govind Prabhu, and we have Yogeshwar Gopal Prabhu, and of course, a team of devotees. Then Namacharya Haridas Thakur Day, we have Mudit Krishna Prabhu, and again Yogeshwar Gopal Prabhu and a team of devotees. So this is called as identifiable service, and one should aspire for identifiable service. Like Thursday, Srila Prabhupada dressing, our Narasimha Prabhu goes. Saturday, Bhoga cooking. So many ladies, Vaishnavis from the, they go for different services. So one must have an identifiable service, right? And that is, Prabhupada writes here, that is the basic principle. The Krishna consciousness movement is based on this principle. We must teach people to absorb ourselves always in the service of the Lord, because that is the position of a living entity, and then one is considered to be liberated. And simply by engaged in the service of the Lord, what will happen is one will rise above the modes of passion and ignorance. Kama Krishna Karmarpane, Krodha Bhakta Dveshi Jane. So the extremely powerful Kamadev, can be conquered by being engaged in the service of the Lord, Kama Krishna Karma Arpane. And thus a devotee who is beyond the three modes of material nature, who has conquered the base modes of good passion and ignorance, becomes more qualified than to the Brahmana also. A Brahmana may be sometimes agitated by the material dualities. Later we'll see powerful Brahmanas are going to come in Bhagavatam. Right? There is Dhruvas Muni, and then there is Shukracharya, and then there is Sharmishtha, Yayati, Devayani. Those stories we'll see. But a devotee is free from material desires, and thus is free from both mental speculation, jnana karma adi, anavritam, and such a personality is always established in the mode of pure Krishna consciousness, beyond the three modes of material nature. Text 66. मन एव मनुष्यस्य पूर्वरूपाणि संशति भविष्यतश्च भद्रं ते तथैव च भविष्यतः. Translation.
Translation, O King, all good fortune unto you. The mind is the cause of the living entities attaining a certain type of body in accordance with its association with material nature. According to one's mental composition, one can understand what the living entity was in his past life, as well as what kind of body he will have in future. Thus, the mind indicates the past and future bodies. Purport, the mind is the index of information about one's past and future lives. If a man is a devotee of the Lord, he cultivated devotional service in his previous life. Similarly, if one's mind is criminal, he was criminal in his last life. In the same way, according to the mind, we can understand what will happen in a future life. In Bhagavad Gita 14.18, it is said, Udvam gachanti sattva astha madhye tishtanti rajasaha jaganya guna vritistha adho gachanti tamasaha. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. If a person is in the mode of goodness, his mental activities will promote him to a higher planetary system. Similarly, if he has a low mentality, his his future life will be most abominable. The lives of the living entity in both the past and future are indicated by the mental condition. Narada Muni is herein offering the king blessings of all good fortune so that the king will not desire anything or make plans for sense gratification. The king was engaged in fruitive ritualistic ceremonies because he hoped to get a better life in the future. Narada Muni desired him to give up all mental concoctions. As explained before, all bodies in heavenly planets and hellish planets arise from mental concoctions, and the sufferings and enjoyments of material life are simply on the mental platform. They take place on the chariot of the mind, Manoratha. It is therefore said, Yasa yasti bhaktira bhagavatasya akinchana sarvaira gunai tatra samasate suraha harava abhaktasya kuto mahaguna manorathe nasati dhavato bahiya. One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods. But one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Bhagavatam 5.18.12. Unless one becomes a devotee of the Lord or becomes fully Krishna conscious, he will certainly hover on the mental platform and be promoted and degraded in different types of bodies. All qualities that are considered good according to the material estimation actually have no value because these so-called good qualities will not save a person from the cycle of birth and death. The conclusion is that one should be without mental desire. Anya abhilashata sunyam jnana karmade anavratam. One should be fully free from material desires, philosophical speculation, and fruitive activity. The best course for a human being is to favorably accept the transcendental devotional service of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of human life. Hare Krishna.
So Narad Muni now here explains how the mind indicates one's past bodies and the future bodies. Mana eva manushasya purva rupani samshati bhavishyatasya bhadramte tathaiva na bhavishyatah bhadramte. All good fortune unto you, Maharaj Prachin Barhi. The mind is cause of the living entities attaining a particular type of body, and according to the mind's composition, one can understand the past body of the living entity and also the future body of the living entity. Then the Purport Srila Prabhupada then explains that mind is the index of information about the past life and the future life. If the mind is filled with Krishna consciousness, if mind is filled with the good thoughts, one can naturally conclude that he is coming from a good background and he is going to go also to the good background. But if there are criminal thoughts in the mind, Prabhupada writes, it indicates that we are coming from the crime background, and unless we course correct, there is the same destination awaiting. And then Srila Prabhupada quotes, Urdhvam gachanti satvastha. How the mind will place us in a particular mode, right? And that the mode will force the activities on us, and those activities are conducted, and then there will be destination. So thus the more of goodness, the mental activities will promote to the higher planets, and the lower mentality, one will go to the abominable life, right? So it just depends on how one is training one's mind. And that's why, the entire Sankirtana process begins with Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. So these past and future bodies are indicated by the mental conditions. And here Narada Muni is offering the king blessings that all good fortune, so that king does not desire attaining anything for sense gratification. Because all these different bodies, they are going to come and go anyways, right? Good in the material world is also binding. It is like the shackle of the gold. Bad in the material world is anyway binding. It is like the iron shackle. But these are different types of the shackles, and one is sitting on the chariot of the body, and one is manorathe nasti dhavato bhai. It's just ramatam upariyadaha, sitting in the chariot of the body and just running in the different pradesha to different senses, trying to conquer some, the temporary false designations. And therefore, unflinching devotion to the Supreme Lord is glorified. Now, this is a very famous verse. यस्यास्ति भक्तिर bhagavate akinchana sarvair gunair tatra samasate sura. The very important word is samasate. Samasate literally means all the good qualities of the demigods will come flying and sit on that devotee, one who has unflinching faith in devotional service. Harava kuto mahat guna manorathena asti dhavato bhai. However, one who is abhakta kuto mahat guna, they may show some good quality, but the presence of the good quality is only for very brief span of time, right? We have already elaborately seen those examples of Epstein files. Big people, big people, and they are going to that Epstein Island and conducting unseen, indulging in unseen, unheard activities, extremely degraded activities. And there are literally the from Newton's chair scientist to the billionaires who are revered across the world. Harava bhaktasya kuto mahatguna manorathena asti dhavato bhi. And therefore, Prabhupada writes here, unless one becomes devotee of the Supreme Lord, one will simply hover on the mental platform, sometimes acting good, sometimes acting bad, sometimes acting crazy, so on and so forth. And thus, the best conclusion is one has to come to the devotional service without the mental desires. Anya vilashita shunyam, jnana karma adi anavritam. And that is the best course for the human being, because is to favorably accept the transcendental devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam Bhakti Ruttam. Text 67. Adrusham ashrutam chatra kvachit manasi drishyate yatha tatha anumantavyam deshakala kriyashrayam. Translation.
Sometimes in a dream, we see something never experienced or heard of in this life. But all these incidents have been experienced at different times, in different places, and in different conditions. Purport. In the previous verse, it was explained that in dreams, we see that which was experienced during the day. But why is it that we sometimes in our dreams see what we have never heard of or seen at any time during this life? Here it is stated that even though such events may not be experienced in this life, they were experienced in previous lives. According to time and circumstances, they combine so that in dreams we see something wonderful that we have never experienced. For instance, we may see an ocean on the peak of a mountain, or we may see that the ocean has dried up. These are simply combinations of different experiences in time and space. Sometimes we may see a golden mountain, and this is due to our having experienced gold and mountains separately. In the dream, under illusion, we combine these separate factors. In this way, we are able to see golden mountains or stars during the day. The conclusion is that these are all mental concoctions. Although they have actually been experienced in different circumstances, they have simply combined together in a dream. This fact is further explained in the following verse.
So at times, Narad Muni says here that the dreams are the combination of different imaginations or images that we have experienced in the previous life. Desha Kala Kriyashrayam. And as per the Desha Kala and Patra, different times, different places, different conditions, all these experiences come together and we see some fantastic things. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that in the dream sometimes we may see ocean on the peak of a mountain, sometimes we may see dried up ocean, sometimes we may see golden mountain, so on and so forth. But all these are combinations of different realities and haphazardly combined within one's mind. So all these are mental concoctions, and they have actually been experienced in the different circumstances. And they simply combine together in the dream. But the dream means that existence of those individual elements, those individual things, somewhere in our previous experience, right? So they are existing and we have experienced them. That's why there is impression, and we are simply combining those impressions. Text 68. सर्वक्रमानुरोधेन मनसि इन्द्रियगोचराः आयान्ति बहुशो यान्ति सर्वे समनसो जनाः. Translation.
The mind of the living entity continues to exist in various gross bodies and according to one's desires for sense gratification. The mind records different thoughts. In the mind, these appears together in different combinations. Therefore, these images sometimes appear as things never seen or heard before. Purport: the activities of the living entity in the body of a dog may be experienced in the mind of a different body. Therefore, those activities appear never to have been heard or seen. The mind continues, although the body changes. Even in this lifespan, we can sometimes experience dreams of our childhood. Although such incidents now appear strange, it is to be understood that they are recorded in the mind. Because of this, they become visible in dreams. The transmigration of the soul is caused by the subtle body, which is the storehouse of all kinds of material desires. Unless one is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, material desires will come and go. That is the nature of the mind, thinking, feeling, and willing. As long as the mind is not engaged in the meditation on the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the mind will desire so many material enjoyments. Sensual images are recorded in the mind in chronological order, and they become manifest one after another. Therefore, the living entity has to accept one body after another. The mind plans material enjoyment, and the gross body serves as the instrument to realize such desires and plans. The mind is the platform onto which all desires come and go. Srila Narottama Das Thakur therefore sings Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitate Kariya Akhiya Arana Kariha Mane Asha. Narottam Das Thakur advises everyone to stick to the principles of carrying out the orders of the spiritual master. One should not desire anything else. If the regulative principles ordered by the spiritual masters are followed rigidly, the mind will gradually be trained to desire nothing but service of Krishna. Such training is the perfection of life. Hare Krishna.
Narad Muni now here describes how the mind is the storehouse of all the thoughts, experiences, and desires which appear in a particular sequence. Sarve kramanurudhena, that is, appearing in the sequence and in different combinations. And therefore, these images sometimes appear as the things never seen or never heard before. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that the activities of the living entity, when he is in one body, say some living entity is in the body of a dog, so the activities of the dog life are also having impressions on the mind. And sometimes we may change the body, although the living entity may change the gross body, the subtle body continues. The mind continues, although the body changes. And therefore, all the experiences, all the desires that we have in the previous life, they continue, and thus the mind simply acts as a godown or storehouse of previous experiences, desires, unfulfilled desires, and so many different thoughts, thinking, feeling, and willing. So this is the nature of the mind, and these images, sarve kramanurodhena, they are stored in the chronological order. Life after life, we have the experiences. Life after life, so the experiences are stored, and therefore, the only solution here is one has to saturate one's mind with Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada quotes Narottam Das Thakur, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Chitte is very important word. Kariya Aikya Arana Kariha Mani Asha. that simply sticking to the principles of the spiritual master offered by the spiritual master, and one should not desire anything, right? And thus the mind will be gradually trained to desire nothing than the service of the Lord, and that training leads to the perfected life. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Prabhupada. Thank you,
Prabhupada. Thank you,
Prabhuji. Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu. Hari Bol.
Prabhu, this bhajan is from Guru Vandana, written by Lochandas Thakur, right?
There are many similar bhajans.
Okay.
ठीक है ना?
Okay.
Yes. Hari Hari.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.